Welcome to the Teach Better Talk podcast, your official podcast for the Teach Better Podcast Network, the hub for all things education, brought to you by teachbetter.com. The Teach Better Talk podcast is committed to answering your burning questions through a variety of lenses and bringing new offers to you and your colleagues to help you thrive throughout the school year. My name is Holly Stuart, and we love your questions here on the pod. If you have any questions that you'd love us to consider as topics for future episodes, please share them with us by emailing info@teachbetter.com.
How do we make science relevant to our students? This is going to be a beautiful way to talk about careers in the classroom as we continue our conversation this week. And I am so excited to introduce our guest, who's a very familiar face. Before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out to, of course, a member of our Teach Better team. I love that we're able to do this because it always gives a little shout out to the people behind the scenes who you may not interact with on a daily basis. And today is all about Amanda. Amanda is an incredible team member who sends out those little gifts, the little postcards, which I just love receiving in the mail. She actually even sends me a postcard on my birthday. I really appreciate getting a little postcard from my own team, from my own company saying happy birthday. So I just love that Amanda's role through and through is to bring people a little smile on a special day. So Amanda, thank you for being just a little special, sweet treat for so much of our team. Another member of our community who is constantly bringing a smile to my face is a member of this podcast episode. Holly is here with us. And guys, if you don't know Holly, just expect shenanigans on today's episode. Holly, how are you?
I'm doing well. I don't know if you set me up well for that, expect shenanigans, but yeah.
I will say, I talked to you about this off recording, but I have to say it now. I do feel like I ask you to do interviews with me all the time. You deserve like a quarterly stipend. Like there's no, I constantly am like, I need something either weird or there's a weird topic or I need to brainstorm something completely absurd. Who are you going to call? Holly Stuart. Like that's just what it is. Like, so I very much appreciate you popping in and discussing this topic. Although this is very much in your wheelhouse. This isn't necessarily as much of a stretch as the other things we've discussed.
Yeah, I think that, the whole reaching out to me to do those weird things that are the non-traditional, I think we really cemented that at the Teach Better conference when we officially met in person.
Teachers will understand. Is that's not the first time we had met, is it?
That was the first time we met in person. It was all, social media, doing podcasts and stuff like that. So we talked all the time, but we hadn't ever met in person.
That makes it even worse. Guys, the story I'm going to tell is terrible. Holly will give you her version, but yeah, you're right. So we're at the Teach Better conference. Teachers, you can put this in perspective as you're listening, especially principals if you're listening. Imagine like the busiest day, right? You have like copies you need to make. There's a ton of emails. You're doing something in between periods and you need someone's help. So you like hand off an element of a project that you're like, can you please, you're like pleading and begging, can you just please figure this out? And you give it to like, I don't know, like a student teacher or an aide or another teacher. And you're like, I trust you to figure this out. I can't do it. That was Holly and I at the Teach Better conference. I'm like, there's so much chaos going on. I don't trust a single person here. Where's Holly? And knowing that that's the first time we met, I didn't feel that way at all. I was like, well, I trust Holly inherently. We've met 100 times.
It was. I mean, that's the way I felt with so many people on the team. It was like, the first time actually seeing people in real life, but I was like, oh my gosh, hey, it's so-and-so. And you just felt like you had, known them forever. So yeah.
Man, that's so funny, Holly, that, yeah, I handed you everything else. The example that I know we can giggle about now is every single banner that we were hanging in every hallway in this 6-story building essentially needed to be hung in an hour, I think, at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Like that was the project. And we had taken photos of exactly what wall, every single piece of product where it needed to go. and it was all color coded, and it literally was foolproof. And we handed it to all these people. And then there was this random stack, and nobody knew where it came from. Nobody knew where we were going to put them. I just turned and was like, here, Holly, make this leave my hands. Good luck.
But it was great though, because of that assignment, I got to know the school really well, because it wasn't like an easy just, one elevator going up and down. I mean, it was take the blue elevator if you want to go to the 3rd floor, but you take the red one if you want to get to the 2nd floor.
God. I forgot about that. That was the funny part about where we were. You're right. There was different elevators going different places. Oh, and there was like a basement, ground floor. And oh my God. It was
crazy.
It was a ball. Anyway, Holly, I appreciate you being that person for me. I think everyone, whether you're listening to the pod or watching on YouTube, we all need that person that you can pull on to say, I trust you with my life. Please help me with this. And don't tell anyone. That's Holly Stuart. I'm really thrilled that you're on the podcast. So thank you so much for showing up for this episode. For those of you who may not know Holly, of course, we'll share her contact information. Incredible educator, and obviously someone you can trust. Holly, if people are not familiar with the work you're doing, are not familiar with you, except now they know that you're incredibly organized and reliable, do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Holly Stuart, and I am currently the education specialist for Foldscope Instruments. And that is a scientific company that really focuses on the aspect of frugal science, which means that we are finding ways, and very creative and innovative ways, to be able to bring scientific instruments into the classroom so that students can have hands-on experiences with real science tools, but without that prohibitive expense of very, very high-tech equipment. So it's a great, our mission is all about equity and access to science education, because science education should be a right for everyone, not just for the privileged few. And it also shouldn't depend on where you are geographically. If you are living in a rural area that doesn't have, many resources, electricity, or anything like that, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to do science, because everyone is fully capable of doing science and being a scientist. It's just the lack of resources that sometimes keeps people from being able to actually follow through with that. So we are working on breaking down those barriers within the company. So I create resources for, and I am the education specialist. So I do, work primarily with schools and with teachers and students. But the resources that I'm creating are truly for everyone. So I don't want people to think that you just have to be a science teacher, or that you have to be a scientist to be able to use these materials and get a lot of benefit and enjoyment out of them. So that's really kind of, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Friends, I will say this is perfect timing, and we didn't even plan it. It just came to mind while Holly was talking. I am a huge advocate of this being the perfect Christmas gift for your child at home. And it's like mid-November, order one and throw it on the shelf and wrap it later. We'll get into the product more, but this is like this. I could not endorse this more as like the perfect Christmas gift. It does not matter how old your child is, in my opinion. This is a go-to. So perfect timing, Holly. It's like we planned this.
Great plug. I love it.
Yeah, no, I really mean it, like for real. So I'm just reflecting. I used to be a science teacher. I know you used to be too. I'm going to ask you a little bit about your background here next, but I'm thinking about the equipment I had as a science teacher. I only was a science teacher for a few years, and then I really focused on math and writing. But the equipment that I'm thinking about are those like really heavy microscopes, those tools that you like pulled out and they looked like, they were generations old. This is kind of what you're referring to in terms of equity and access to science equipment. Is that correct?
Exactly. So, in a science classroom, you have the big bulky pieces of equipment. And because it's, again, with the cost of it, you're lucky if you have one microscope in your classroom. A lot of times it is, just a couple of them maybe that the building has to share, and you have to figure out which days, which teacher's going to be able to use it. Sure. And then even then you've got one microscope for 30 kids. to be able to share, so it does make it very challenging. And with the way that we designed our product, which is called the Fold Scope, it is made out of paper, and there's like the cost is very, very low to get a classroom set of Fold Scopes. So now you've gone from having maybe one in your building to having one for every student. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm reflecting as a, middle school educator, it would be like the 7th grade teacher has maybe 2 microscopes, and it's too much of a hassle to go up there and negotiate with them and to borrow them. Mm-hmm. So I'm just not going to bother, even though it would have enhanced my lesson. And so there's so many different conversations of educators out here that might be able to improve their lesson, not even in a science classroom, but just looking out into the world, which I know we're going to be able to get into in this dialogue here on the pod, that your Fold Scope is going to be able to offer. Mm-hmm. I will say, even though we've talked about this maybe 100 times, the concept of it being made out of paper does make you sound a little kooky. Like, it doesn't sound like it should work. I just want you to know that every time you say that, I'm like, oh man, does this even work?
And that's why I love when I'm able to go out, whether it's at conferences or doing workshops or, going into schools or even just, I've had stuff that I've done just outside with my neighbors, just showing people. But those wow moments that people have when because they look at it the way that you're describing, like, okay, Holly, whatever,
Yeah, it's like a gimmick. You're like, oh, it's like a cute little magic trick. And you're like, no, really, it actually does what I'm telling you.
Yeah, this is a real science tool. It's real. It really is. And, just having those moments where people are just like, oh my gosh, I just went to, I was at what's called the M&M conference, which is microscopy and microanalysis. And it was so funny because it was, we're in there and we have our table, and we're in this conference with people whose equipment is like millions of dollars. Sure. These are huge research-based, companies that are there showing their newest products and the different parts that come with it and everything. And my coworker and I were like, people would come to the table and we're like, we have the only microscope that you could literally throw it on the floor and it's no big deal.
Oh my God. Yeah, you could put it in your back pocket.
And, we had these people coming from, because everyone kind of walks around, you're meeting people and everything. And, these people were coming from these giant, like I said, a lot of them couldn't even bring their microscopes with them because of how big they are. And they came to our table and they were blown away by how well our microscope works. And, when you think millions of dollars to be able to get, microscopy results, or $2,
right.
It's really impressive how well it can hold up, and so it is one of those things where I want people to understand that just because the norm might say science equipment has to be expensive, and, it doesn't. Right. We can find ways. And if we're able to do this with microscopes, I can't even imagine the ideas that, by kids being able to see this in a whole new way of thinking about a traditional piece of lab equipment, that this might inspire them to then say, I wonder if I could redo this, or I wonder if I could redesign this, and just imagine what we could do, this whole world of frugal science out there and getting science equipment into everybody's hands. That would be great.
And Holly, I think that's why I really loved it as a concept for a Christmas gift. And I'm not trying to plug this. I think of it every single time we talk about this, because you give it to a kid in terms of, it's not a screen time thing. It's good for all ages. It's totally based on like curiosity. The kit that I'm thinking of, because there's a lot of different purchasing things I know you guys have on your website. I think there's a kit that's like the easiest go-to. Do you have 2 kits that you guys have? There's like one kit that I'm like, it's one.
I'm gonna grab them real quick here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, I know exactly what I'm gonna recommend for people. I'm like, there's a kit, go buy the kit. Anyway, while she's grabbing that, it's such an easy, like, little gift that when you open it up, it comes with every single thing they need. and they're
Mhm.
like, they can explore the house, they can go outside. Like, this is just something that will like last forever. They don't really need anything difficult. And
Yeah.
it's like the coolest thing that isn't a screen. It isn't tech. It's just like unbelievable. I'm like
Yeah.
nerding out.
No, I love it. I love it. So it is, we have two of them. One, and I think this is the one you're talking about.
Yeah, the green one. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Foldscope 2.0, and it comes in a metal box, and it really is a microscopy kit in a box. And you can see how big it is. This has a microscope in it. And again, very sturdy. Like, I've taken this outside. It's gotten dropped. It's put in the water. It's okay. But inside of it is this is the microscope, that light green part up there. So it's, and it has everything that you need. It's got slides, it's got lenses, it's got its own little portable light if the lighting isn't great, because you can use this without, any light source or anything, just holding it up to the sky. So it has everything that you need in there. So that's the 2.0.
Yeah.
And then we do have our Foldscope Mini, which is the smaller one. And this is the one that doesn't have any of the extra bells and whistles. There's no extra lenses or anything, but even so, inside you still get your own little, I don't know if you can really see all the different parts that are in there, but you go to the website, you can see it all. But this one, the microscope, is really just it really is just, this is a piece of paper that it just folds once, and it's a microscope that gives you 140x magnification. And it is great for like the little ones who might not have that dexterity to be able to use some of the parts of the 2.0. But this is, it doesn't take much to just put your fingers here and look through that right there.
Right.
And it's,
that's the one you get when you're like, I don't really believe Holly and Ray. Let's see if this thing works.
Yeah. Yep. And it does.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Guys, you'll have to let us know. Obviously, we can promote this for schools. It's perfect. I could not sing its praises enough. I think it's the weirdest contraption ever. Every time we talk about it, I'm baffled. Yeah. I'm so glad Holly went from the classroom into this team, because otherwise I would have never believed this. I would have totally thought that the website was like such a scam.
Yeah.
But I also think it's like the coolest Christmas gift, because every time I need to buy a Christmas gift for like a friend's child or a cousin or anything, I'm like, done. It's my go-to gift. I'm such a nerd. So, well, Holly, we have talked for 16 minutes and haven't even gotten to our topic. So I'm so sorry to our friends that are eager to get into careers in the classroom. I think we've touched on it just a bit, but stick with us. We're getting into our key question, and we'll be right back.
Quick pause to talk about school-wide observation and teacher one-on-one coaching. Depending on how you're doing your school networking this year, we want to encourage you to head over to teachbetter.com and truly look at how you can observe your teachers more closely and give them one-on-one coaching to meet their goals. We all want to reach all learners, but are we reaching all teachers? Did you know that most Teach Better strategic plans allow for not only in-person workshops, but also classroom observation that allows for teacher one-on-one coaching after the fact? We want to see it in person. We want to help your teachers, and we want to build a relationship with the people that matter most to you. Head over to teachbetter.com/professional development to see what plan might work for your school.
How can we make science relevant to students? We have clearly talked about a lot of examples about the Foldscope specifically, but Holly is an expert in so many different things, and it's not just about science classroom. So let's talk about bringing relevancy, especially to a science classroom. Holly, where does this conversation begin?
Well, for me, it's when we say, making the content relevant to your students, because we all know that as teachers, as educators, you walk into the classroom and the kids are like, why do I have to know this? Why? When am I ever going to use this? And honestly, the beauty with science is that that's the way the world functions. It's based on these scientific principles that we're trying to, expose them to and get them to learn about in the classroom. So when you talk about relevancy, just being able to say, okay, did you see the moon? Do you know why it's that shape? Do you know, why the light is hitting it in this way? Where does the sun have to be for that? And what does that mean about, the way that things move, and how does that affect seasons? I mean, there's so many ways to be able to make the content relevant to your students.
I love the concept of starting first with the question rather than the information that you want the students to eventually gather at the end of the lesson. So rather than saying, okay, let's discuss the concept of the moon. This is why it's circular. This is what it's made of. This is how many times we've been there. Da, da, da. You're asking the question. You're posing first the element of curiosity. That model can be modeled in every subject area. And that's something that I wonder, as we're reflecting, for those of you listening or watching on YouTube, I wonder if we use that concept enough.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like, because I know that when I would start a new unit in my classroom, before I even started, like you said, just loading them up with information, I had at the different lab stations, I made trays, and I called them exploration trays. And I put whatever tool we were going to be using during that unit on the tray for them to just explore and see what they could do with it. Before, no preconceived notions as to what it was. Some of the kids knew what some of the tools were, some didn't. But they would, they were picking them up, they were, pulling on them, stretching them, whatever, figuring out what is this thing going to do. And the reason why I felt that that was really important is because when you're talking about, teaching, you always want to be able to build on prior knowledge and their, what are their experiences that they are bringing to the classroom, again, for that relevancy. Not everybody has science tools sitting around at home. So, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, well, when you use da 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 da, there might be kids that are like, use the what? What are you talking about? But now I've kind of leveled the playing field by letting everyone see the tools that we're going to use, and they use them in these different ways. And they're looking at other people at other lab stations like, oh, did you see so-and-so held it like this? And they were able to get this to happen. Yeah. And now they're all building up this base that I can then throughout the unit refer back to, and say, hey, do you remember when Johnny was holding the lens and he was able to make the, the light get clear, more in focus or versus getting big and blurry? Here's why. And now everybody has an experience that they can draw on. And I've given them that prior knowledge in a way that doesn't feel intimidating, like, oh, Mrs. Stewart is just starting off right away with us taking notes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's helping again. And then that relevancy can come in because the students can then say, oh, well, this is like when I did such and such at home. And even though they might not have had that tool, that science concept still applies to what's going on at their house. So it brings the relevancy of science into the classroom and shows them how it relates to what's outside of the classroom.
Something really notable about this next suggestion that you shared is not just the emphasis on using curiosity as a way to bring relevancy. And I love where you noted, evening the playing field for all students, but also the trust in students during that curiosity time. I know so many of us teachers in general, we hate giving up control, right? Yeah. Like you said, oh, I put things on the table and I let them play with them. And first thought is, so they're breaking them. So I lose all my, so there's stuff I have to clean up because it shatters. Like instantly I'm like, oh, so they broke them. Like that sounds awful. And as you kept sharing, I'm like, man, what a disservice I did for my students reflecting as you're sharing, because I instantly thought no matter what object it is, I didn't even know what objects you were talking about. My assumption is that they broke them.
Yeah. Well, and does it happen? Yes. But again, it's all learning experiences. And it wasn't, again, the types of things you want to talk about a frugal classroom. That was mine. And so the types of things that I was putting in front of them, obviously safety first, right? I'm not going to be, putting, like a dissecting kit with a scalpel in there on day one and be like, hey guys, explore, see what you can see. That is definitely not. Yeah, definitely not what was happening. And honestly, I think that my the biggest things that got destroyed, and I just always made sure that I had a bunch of extras, were little mini slinkies. Those are great for teaching about waves.
Oh, yeah.
And, the worst thing that happened was a Slinky would get tangled up,
Well,
and
I mean, who doesn't love a good slinky and who
yeah.
won't play? I mean, we've all done it. But that's a great example, Holly, of if this is going to be something that you trust students with on a consistent basis, you know that this is going to be an element that almost a core value that you believe in your classroom. Like, I'm always going to kind of begin with curiosity, kind of always using this model. Then that becomes a part of your classroom management. You begin to set the culture of, I'm going to put things in front of you. And when you're careful with them, that allows us to continue doing this. And so, as much as I'm like, oh, they break them, like, well, wouldn't if you have set the culture and expectation. So I just love that you're adding an element of student trust into curiosity, because I do believe that that's an element that many of us, including myself as a teacher, have struggled with over time, is sometimes bringing in relevancy and bringing in curiosity means that as an educator, we're stepping outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that I always stressed in the beginning of the school year was the concept of respect. And, a lot of times when a teacher says the word respect, students automatically think, okay, so she's telling me that I have to respect her and, respect her authority. And the way that I used the word respect in the classroom was, yes, I expect you guys to respect me as your teacher, but I also respect you as my students. And I expect all of us to be able to respect the classroom environment. And that means using the tools appropriately. And one of the things that I had that was probably the most valuable that I did put out on everybody's lab stations were glass prisms. When the pieces of glass that used to make a rainbow appear to teach refraction. Yeah. So, and I never had anybody break a glass prism. So if you put the expectation out there and they know that it's not just, oh, Mrs. Stewart's being mean. It's, no, these are our materials and all 120 of my students have to be able to use these, not just you guys, that, there's a reason for why we do what we do. So, yeah.
I do have to give a note that for any educator listening, I do believe that slowly kind of letting go of the reins gets easier the more you do it. Like, did you find that? Like, the more you gave students the autonomy to be curious, to allow themselves to prove themselves that to you that they could be responsible and respect the classroom, the easier it felt to continue to like let go of the leash. Is that?
Yeah. And that helps a lot with, again, when you have your students that they feel like, okay, I'm allowed to go and explore these things and try these new things, that makes them more engaged, which again helps with all those classroom management issues that people who try to have those tight reins and control over everything are struggling with, because the kids are trying to constantly poke at the box and like, no, I want to break out. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And this is a way to be able to say, no, let's have a little bit more of that freedom so that you can actually learn in a way that makes sense to you. So
such an interesting concept here to look at relevancy and bringing relevancy into so many different classrooms, not just science. If you are listening to the pod, whether you're listening in the morning, the afternoon, or just before bed, we would love to challenge you to think about this concept of bringing curiosity into your classroom as a way to use relevancy, and question a little bit of how you're able to give over that trust to students, let go of the reins a little bit. And how often do you actually do that, right? How often are you able to allow students that element of freedom? I'm excited to hear from all of you who are listening or watching over on YouTube. Stick with us as we get into our concept that we are going to have our big takeaway, and of course, connecting with Holly. This has been quite a conversation about science and bringing in relevancy into the classroom. I definitely want to make sure that you are able to connect with the one and only Holly Stuart, amazing educator that has transformed so many different elements of our Teach Better team. She is an ambassador. She is a blogger. She does everything. I feel like in our team, we will never get rid of her. She is such a staple and an OG for sure. And we would love to make sure that all of you have her in your PLN, because she is somebody that is the biggest cheerleader for helping and being an advocate for educators feeling good in their profession. Before we get to sharing any of her contact information, I'd love to ask you, Holly, for any major takeaway in this episode. If an educator was to walk away with a tidbit of knowledge, what would you hope that they walked away with?
Well, I guess, just again, thinking back on the issue of relevance, right? And I know that our focus has been on science content because I'm a science geek. So I bring science into my classroom all the time. But just thinking about, the content area that you are teaching and how do you see it outside of the classroom? And what are some ways that you can bring that in so that your students can see real life examples that are outside of a textbook or outside of the four walls of their classroom. So it can start to expand their horizons of where is this content going to be used, so that they can start answering that question of how am I going to use this? So think about ways as educators, think about ways that you see your content. And there are so many examples for all content areas that are out there in the world that you can bring into your classroom, and just let the kids see it and let them, kind of explore it. And, whether it's a writing sample or a math problem that you had to, like something that randomly came up that you had to calculate something, or whatever you're seeing on the news about, all the things happening. I mean, goodness, all the things happening with politics and the, geography and all the things that are going on around the world. All these content areas have relevancy. Sometimes our students just need that extra little, here's where it's relevant, so just bring stuff into the classroom. Don't just stick to a textbook or your traditional curriculum. Bring real life examples in.
Such a good element to walk away with. Friends, we want to make sure you add Holly as a part of your PLN if you haven't done so already. Holly, how can they stay connected to you? Would you mind sharing social media elements? Also, we would love the Foldscope website. I want them to make sure they have the opportunity if they're interested. And I'm not trying to push anyone to do this, but I'm kind of pushing you. First of all, if you want it for your classroom, go crazy. Second of all, I'm telling you, I'm a loser. This is the best Christmas gift. I am so glad we got this reminder. I'm writing it down. I need 6 of them. So that's my plan for any kid. I hope you're not watching this. I'm getting this for you.
now every child within your sphere knows what they're getting for Christmas.
No, but seriously, that I'm not kidding. If any of you don't believe me, I will give you the names of my friends, and they'll be like, "Yep, this is what they buy, and that's just what they get," and they love it so much. Anyway, do you mind sharing all that?
Well, first of all, I also want to say that no, you're not a loser for, exposing kids to the world of science. That makes you my hero. So,
well, I will say it's also so original because I have never given it to someone who'd been like, oh, I already have this. I mean, I wish that happened, but it doesn't. So I can give it to a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, and they're always like, what is this? I'm like, oh, you have no idea. And then they just are baffled and they just look at everything for hours. I'm like, I know I'm the coolest. I know.
Yeah. But so, if people want to reach out to me, I really do hope that, especially after hearing the two of us talking, I hope that people realize just how genuine and real and how passionate I am about the, the product and everything. But you can always reach me at holly@foldscope.com. So that's my email there. And then on social media, I'm at Holly A. Stuart, and it is Stuart. So you can find me on Twitter, and I'm always posting pictures of stuff that I find underneath my Foldscope. So it is just full of microscopic images and videos and things like that. And then if you want to, learn more about the company, the website is just www.foldscope.com. And, we've got all kinds of information on there. There is a link to the store, and there's a lot that like Ray was saying, there's a lot of different items in the store. If you do feel overwhelmed about, I have no idea what I would even, where I would begin. If I'm a teacher, do I want to get a classroom set? If so, do I want the mini classroom set, the original classroom set, the 2.0 class? There's so many different things. If you do have any kind of, questions or anything like that, please reach out to me. I am definitely here to I really do feel like the people who buy Foldscopes, you're part of the family. In the same way, with Teach Better, it's like, you say you can't get rid of me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to let you get rid of me. Once you're part of the Teach Better team, like you're in that family. I feel the same way about our Foldscoping community. We are definitely here to support you. And because I feel like the worst thing you can do is to get one of these and then just sit it in a corner somewhere because you're not sure exactly what to do with it. We do have trainings and things like that we offer. We've got so many different so many different resources available on our website, whether it's videos or just, written tutorials on how to use it, ideas for what kinds of things you can go out and look for. So yeah, definitely come to the website, look around, and reach out to me and ask any questions that you might have. I'm happy to start a conversation.
I love it. Friends, of course, if you have any problems connecting with Holly, you can reach out to me or anyone else on the team and we'll get you connected. She's a very easy one that everyone on the team will probably have her phone number and all her social media. So we're happy to get you connected and give you those direct links. Holly, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was just fun to catch up, but also fun to be able to talk shop. So I really appreciate it.
It's always great to start off my day talking to you. So thank you for having me on.